Welcome to another Fantasy Goodfellas video where we talk about the top 15 tight end rankings for week 9. You ready?
I'm ready.
The Fantasy Goodfellas.
Boom, boom, boom. Rolling on the field.
The Fantasy Goodfellas. All right, before we get started on week 9's rankings, tell me how we did last week.
Well, if you take out Gronk, who got hurt early, we hit on 6 of the remaining 14. It's a tough week, but it was a tough week for everybody. Guys like Kelce, Pitts, Dalton Schultz failed us.
Well, let's get back on track. So for this week's top 15 tight end rankings, Richard, take it over.
Number 1, we're going to trust Travis Kelce again. He's going to be home against the Packers.
It seems to me with Kansas City this year, we're just trusting the resume of all these players. What do you think?
I'm with you, right? And it's been a pattern of consistency for a few years now. So anybody that took Travis Kelce in the first round is hurting right now. He looks like a bust of a first-round pick. But I expect that team to rebound. And if they don't, you'll see him drop in my rankings. And number 2, Darren Waller's back, and he will be at the Giants.
Waller's going against the Giants. That should bode well for him, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we have him at number 2. Hopefully he's healthy. That's the key. If he's healthy, he's going to have a big game. And number 3, Mark Andrews will be home against the Vikings.
Well, we know Andrews has been super consistent. So tell me something about him that wouldn't expect this week.
I downgraded him at the beginning of the season just because, I don't expect Lamar Jackson to pass that much. But surprisingly, he's been passing more. And Mark Andrews, we know, is one of his favorite targets. It's now 1A and 1B with Marquise Brown. But Mark Andrews has been consistent at the tight end position, and that's all we want. And number 4, Mike Gesicki home against Houston.
What puts Gesicki so high in this week's rankings?
Matchup, Tua has been playing well, and he loves throwing to Mike Gesicki. And number 5, Kyle Pitts at New Orleans.
You think with Ridley being out, Pitts would have a great game. That didn't happen. What do you see?
Yeah, it was surprising after the big game he had against the Dolphins. He had a dud this week, but I think Kyle Pitts rebounds. He's just too talented. New Orleans has a good pass defense, but I still think Ryan will look for him often. And number 6, Dalton Schultz will be home against Denver.
Schultz still gets the targets there in Dallas. He didn't have a great game last week. What do you think he does this week?
Yeah, well, Cooper Rush was a quarterback, right? So Cooper Rush, he's going to have, a different dynamic, a different chemistry with the receivers. But Dak, we expect Dak back, and Dak loves to throw to Schultz. And number 7, George Kittle will be home against Arizona.
Kittle's coming back from injury. What do you expect him to do if he plays?
Definitely going to be the focal point of that offense. It's either, they like to run, so they're going to go with Mitchell. But Deebo Samuel, Kittle, they're going to make catches, and Kittle is just automatically going to be one of the better tight ends. I'm just excited to have him back. And number 8, Zach Ertz at San Francisco.
Zach Ertz looked hot the first week, kind of had a mediocre game. The key is, can he get into the end zone this week?
We will see, but Arizona is, and Kyler Murray are going to put up points against the 49ers. And I think Zach Ertz is going to be in a good position to catch a touchdown. And number 9, Dallas Goedert, who will be home against the LA Chargers.
Goedert's playing good. What could it take for him to play great?
He's solid. I don't know if he's ever going to put monster numbers. That offense is kind of built around, a balance of running and passing, but he'll be consistent. Number 10, Hunter Henry at Carolina.
I guess you expect Hunter Henry to play well against Carolina this week?
Never going to have monster numbers because Mac Jones just throws a bunch of short passes, but he's been consistent. He's been more consistent than many tight ends. And number 11, Tyler Higbee, who will be home against Tennessee.
If we went off last week's stats, Higbee shouldn't be here. Why is he here?
When you look at the remaining tight ends, he has the offense, has the quarterback, so I have to go with him. And number 12, CJ Uzomah, who will be home against the Browns.
I feel like you don't like him. What's holding you back from consistently ranking him high?
I've had him on my list the last few weeks, so I'm starting to trust him more. But I just want to keep him in the top 15 for fear that I'll miss out on a big game. And number 13, Noah Fant at Dallas.
Here's another guy. If we went off of last week's stats, he ain't around.
No, you're absolutely right. And Noah Fant, I'm starting to trust him less because of Teddy Bridgewater, the Teddy Bridgewater effect. But he's got a good matchup, right? Because he's playing against the Cowboys. Cowboys are going to put up a lot of points. Denver's going to have to pass. Bridgewater's going to have to pass. And Noah Fant's a great target. With a good quarterback, he would be ranked much higher. And number 14, Dan Arnold, who'll be home against Buffalo.
Well, that's not a name you hear a bunch. What's going on?
Yeah, well, Dan Arnold's been getting a lot of targets. He had a big game last week. I mean, we know Jacksonville's terrible. They got a tough matchup against the Bills, but they're probably going to have to pass to catch up. And Dan Arnold is becoming one of Trevor Lawrence's favorite targets. And number 15, Tyler Conklin at Baltimore.
We always say tight ends depend on touchdowns. He only has one for the season, but why is he ranked in your top 15?
He's been consistent. He's been getting targets. He's making catches, more consistent than what's remaining. So for that reason, we have him in our top 15. And hey, if he catches a touchdown, he'll be even higher.
All right. Thanks for coming on here and sharing your top 15 tight end rankings for week 9.
It's my pleasure. Remember, like, subscribe, ask us questions in the comments section, and we will be bringing more and more content to you.
Those Fantasy Goodfellas.
Rolling on the field.
Those Fantasy Goodfellas.